Hello, Tomek.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having Moonspell.
Hey, you're my favorite band like of all time, so
Oh,
I
great.
couldn't
All
resist.
right. It's a good start.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Uh,
to hear that.
Moonspell's new album is now available, and it's like a live album with an orchestra. And Moonspell was like very orchestral even in the beginning, because already in Wolfheart you have like songs like Vampiria, Anaerotic Alchemy. Later we've got songs like Awake, and in more recent history, John Phipps worked heavily on this theme. So was a concert with an orchestra something that you've been thinking for a long time?
Well, maybe so, but first and foremost, it was an opportunity. I mean, Moonspell has been active for many years, and the band with such a history and such a legacy has to keep the ideas fresh for ourselves and for our fans. So basically, after Hermitage, we were entertaining the idea of making a new album, a studio album, but it seems like we couldn't find the right mojo or the right direction or the right inspiration. So we just got together and opened our horizons to things that we haven't done before and that will fit the Moonspell, let's say, career and music, etc. So back in the pandemics, which is for us a great divider of Moonspell pre-pandemics or heavy metal or music pre-pandemics and then after pandemics. During the pandemics, I got a call from Maestro Vasco that was directing, conducting actually the Sinfonietta de Lisboa. And we kind of planted the seed of working together, but we didn't have the chance. So things were building up slowly. So when we started like going out on tour, Paradise Lost, Tranquility, etc., we got another call from a big promoter here in Portugal that wanted Moonspell to headline the biggest arena in Portugal. And of course, it was a very big project and a very big show for us. So we thought that it was time, to man up and to join Moonspell with an orchestra. Because as you say, and I agree musically, the clues were there. I don't believe Moonspell has any big dreams other than making music and surviving and pleasing the fans, and being alive. But I think when I see Opus Diabolicum now, I think it was definitely worth the time, the money invested, because I think it's a brilliant live album because it's very authentic, very raw, and quite uh, um, a breath of fresh air on the many metal bands meet orchestras. Because except for bands like Septic Flesh, for instance, I think uh, all the others were really sweet and really classic. And Opus Diabolic is a very wild album. It sounds really live. It sounds really authentic. So yeah, we are pleased that we took this step. Yeah.
And I was thinking about Pedro's role in sounding of the album. How can you make sure that the keys don't get lost under the sound of the orchestra? Did you have to rethink like his role during this concert or changing his parts?
It's a very good question because Pedro had this dilemma, you know, and we thought that keyboards are an essential part of Moonspell. We used them since the beginning of our career. It was also a time that more keyboard players came into metal. Nowadays, it's something very ordinary, but back then wasn't that ordinary, except a few bands, especially bands that we loved. So Pedro had the same dilemma that you ask on your question, because Pedro has always been our one-man orchestra in a way for Moonspell, and many of the arrangements will sit down on what Pedro has done before. So we sat down with Philippe Melo, the arranger, and we exposed this problem, and we just approach keyboards and orchestra differently, because in the end of the day it's very, very different. Keyboards are more of a fantasy sound. It's us thinking about landscapes, musical landscapes, the five of us, and with the orchestra just adds up. So what the orchestra is playing is never what Pedro is playing. They had their own arrangements, and as you see, sometimes they add up, sometimes they play something completely different. There was something that we really wanted to do, because otherwise it will be too easy. I mean, we had a lot of, as you said, the first question, we had a lot to pick up from, especially from 1755 album, which was made with some real instruments, but most of it was made by John Phipps, as you say, with virtual orchestration, and he's definitely very good at that. So the challenge here was to have the human factor, the presence of an orchestra, and I think nothing can really replace that. But now that the album is done, I think we all learned a lot from working with an orchestra, and Pedro too. Sometimes he might have felt that, well, maybe my job is useless here, but it wasn't. So that was definitely one of the main concerns, not to go just chasing the keyboards arrangements and to create things that only an orchestra can do.
And you've mentioned 7055 album. A large part of the concert album is devoted to this one, because even and Nomedo is the version that is appearing on this album and not the version from Alpha Omega. So why is this material so heavily represented?
Well, if we wanted to play with an orchestra, 1755 will have been and was the cornerstone for that, because hands down, even though it's kind of a special project, special album sung in Portuguese, etc., it's an album that its foundations, it's an orchestral album. So the orchestra was really from the scratch a big part of 1755 to translate the classical, uh, you know, um, 18th century moods and also the urgency of making an album that sings about the biggest disaster in our hometown and how it changed Portugal and Europe and everything else, especially in a world of South Europe that was dominated by Catholic religion. So when we approached the idea of making an orchestra, we said immediately, for many reasons, special musical reasons, 1755 has to sit down as the foundation for this project. So it did. Also, one of my biggest ambitions would be to play 1755 with an orchestra in open air Lisbon, right in Terreiro do Paço, which is the main plaza where the big impact was felt in 1755. But I don't think that the city hall will allow us to do that. It's not that they are very supportive of rock and roll and heavy metal. They prefer other kinds of artists, fado, hip hop, neo-African music. So, but I think it will be good. So, I mean, like I said, we have to grab the opportunities, and we had the opportunity of playing the biggest arena and to open the show with a set of songs of 1755 to set the mood. So for us, it's also some justice done to this record that we released in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, but that opened a new window for Moonspell, because it's not a secret that when time will come, we'll probably do another album in Portuguese about Portuguese history and culture. And this time around, why not record it already with an orchestra? Now we have the contacts, now we have, the knowledge, so it can be a future project, yeah.
And the concert opens with instrumental song Tungstenio, which is like in a sense a presentation of the orchestra, like an intro for the entire evening. How did Felipe Melo come to be responsible for it? Because after all, Moonspell fans know him as a director.
Well, Philippe is a great guy, and he has some history with Moonspell. He's one of the most famous creative persons right now in Portugal. He has his hands on everything from cinema to humor. He comes from jazz music. He's an amazing piano player. But for us, it was quite uh, a great welcoming opportunity to work with him as a musician too, because we never did. So he was the obvious choice to arrange the Moonspell score. It was our personal choice. It was Maestro's personal choice. So we were very in the same page when it came to Philippe. And also, Philippe is one of these guys that you give him a job and it just takes it to the latest consequences. So it wasn't just that he wrote 250 pages of music for Moonspell, very intricate, very complex, very deep, arrangements that sound beautiful, even when we watch the orchestra playing without Moonspell, just with the click track. It sounded amazing. It sounded like it had a life of its own. With Moonspell, of course, it became what we are releasing now. But we knew that it would be like giving 200% or more. So when he was doing the arrangements, he thought that Inom Dumed was a very nice intro, but he wanted something else to introduce the orchestra. So he gifted us Tungstênio, because it's a heavy metal. So that was his private joke with Maestro Vasco, and I think it fits really really well because it's different. It introduces the band already and the orchestra. It's a brand original song with Moonspell as the guest of the orchestra, and then everything changes and translates and fits really well into the rest of the show. So we are very thankful to Flip because he did an amazing job scoring the music, but also this was like a final offering, a final gift for Moonspell and Moonspell fans. And I mean, it's a great attitude. There wasn't like, oh, I want more money. I want no. Actually, all this work was marked by friendship, comradeship. I heard horror stories about working with orchestras, with maestros, with musicians from classical music, but we were so lucky, and we also created the conditions that everybody was really happy in being playing on this show, and I think that shows in the DVD and in the film in their final result.
Yeah, Christopher Johnson from Therion recently told me that playing a concert with an orchestra is like a pain in the ass, especially in the mixing, because, for example, you want to put drums more in the front, and then it turns out that the drums also have like some violins in the back, so it's very hard to make this. So, have you encountered similar problems?
Of course, I mean, I heard a lot of orchestral metal albums. Of course, I know Therion very well. They were one of the first bands to embrace this style. I always loved their style, especially in albums like Telly, etc., where they had a choir. I love Septic Flesh too. I heard other, like I heard Metallica, I had Epica, I heard Catatonic, I had Opeth. And my heart and my gut feeling was definitely going more with bands like Septic Flesh than with these other bands. Because why? We didn't want to sweeten Moonspell, and sometimes when you do it symphonic, you go to places that are too comfortable for the listener or too comfortable for the band. It just ends up to be a product of adding an orchestra and just polishing the roughness of an orchestra. An orchestra, it's a living organism, And when I was growing up, I had my record collection of heavy metal and gothic, but I always had, especially Eastern Europe, composers like Mussorgsky, Prokofiev, but also Verdi, Indaya Zirai, Wagner, all the strong ones, and those ones have a lot to connect with heavy metal music, and that's what I was looking for. So when I heard the first mix of Jaime Gomes Arellano, they did an amazing job. Well, I mean, we are friends, and we have to be honest. I told them, well, you are committing the sin that I didn't want to. You're thinking about the orchestra first and all these problems that the cellos get in the microphones and you get in the overheads, etc. But I said, well, this is a live album of Moonspell featuring an orchestra. It's not the other way around. So first, you take care of Moonspell, you give it a proper live sound. What happened in there? You don't put it below on the mix. You put it in your face. And I'm pretty sure that the orchestra will find this space after the band did. And this is exactly what he did. And he told me, well, I wanted to do that, but I wanted your blessing. I said, you don't need my blessing. You're a producer. I'm just a singer. I don't know the buttons. I don't know the compressors. I don't know the microphone. So it was a hard job, but also it was always kept keeping in the loop, always communicating. And I'm super happy with the sound because I didn't want to do something that sounded like S&M from Metallica, for instance, which is great in their own way, but I wanted to do something completely different. I wanted to do something with a vertigo, something dangerous, and something that just blows people away, even though it's a live album.
And when the news about Moonspell concert with an orchestra broke, I already have like a few songs in my head that would sound cool, like for example that Tragic Heights, but eventually
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't hear. But were there any songs that you considered but ultimately didn't work out, didn't fit the right mood?
Well, first we have to be honest. We have to negotiate with the orchestra. It's not like any orchestra will play a 2-hour set of heavy metal and extreme music. And so at the beginning, they just wanted to play 7 or 8 songs. So we were negotiating with them, and they ended up playing 15 plus Tungstenio. So we have to see those limitations of working with an orchestra, because the band is just 5 or 6 guys. So you tell them, okay, let's play a Tragic Heights. You rehearse it a couple of times, and then you go. So to choose a repertoire, we really had to consider a lot of factors. First, what we talked about is about 1755, which will take already a big space on the set list. Then the evergreens of Moonspell that were already like flirting with orchestral, like Vampiria or Alma Mater or Full Moon Madness, and also other songs that I think it will even benefit more already from orchestra treatments like Breathe or Extinct, and some more risky choices like Proliferation, which for me embodies the opposite diabolical spirit, even though it has no vocals. For me, that's what is a heavy metal band playing with an orchestra. It's based on Rite of Spring from Stravinsky. We just metallized it, and the orchestra came together. So Proliferation, Finish Terra, everything invaded. We tried to do a set list that probably people weren't expecting. There was some great songs that were left out. I think at Tragic Heights is one. I was listening to it the other day, and if we go on doing orchestra projects, it might come. It might be a choice, one of the first choices to add to the repertoire. But also, like when you try a song like Opium, for instance, it didn't work, because it's just a short song. It's more of a rock and roll song, even though it's one of the fans' favorites. And I didn't want to have 45 musicians playing for 3 minutes, but we could go endlessly. I mean, we had limitations of time, limitations of physical effort from the maestro, from its concentration, from the concentration of orchestra. And we always like people to be a bit surprised about our set lists with or without orchestra. I think a show has to tell a narrative, being old songs, new songs, and when Moonspell plays and when people come to shows, they know perfectly that we can pull a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, last time we've been in Poland, we play Magdalene, for instance. We can go and play Shadow Sun. We can go and play Under Satanai and the Moonspell songs. I think it's important to have some variation. And believe me, we did these 15 songs, and I could think of 10 more to do with Moonspell, because I'm curious about it. I'm curious about Awake that has a string section. I'm curious about the Tragic Heights. I'm curious about other 1755 songs like Todos os Santos. So yeah, for me it feels complete. It doesn't feel incomplete, because also we have to see it's like almost 100 minutes of music. And nowadays, people like to listen to 5 or 6 minutes of music, not our fans, fortunately. So we have to regard all of that. But I'm very happy with the result and with because it had a lot of dynamics. The show, there was never a dull moment, and it kind of was through peaks and valleys, which is like the Moonspell musical history. Also has to do with the atmosphere.
And in 1755 and Disaster, Hugo does an excellent job. But I have to ask, what happened on the tour with Rotting Christ that, like you mentioned in the booklet of From Down Below, that brought the band to the brink of self-destruction? Because I was on this tour in Gdańsk, and you like
All right.
did you feel like any tension like on the stage?
First and foremost, it was too much of a big tour, so we felt exploited by our agent back then. So we split ways. Of course, Poland, it's always a second home. for MOONSPELL. So because of the audience and because of the history that we have since '95 with Poland, it's always a highlight for us because people really love MOONSPELL. They are not complaining that we just play songs from this or from that period. You know, it's an uncompromising love between the Polish maniacs, as we call them, and MOONSPELL. I mean, last time we played was Warsaw, and we were blown by the response that we had. There was probably more people even to see us than to see the headliners of Dark Tranquility. But it came to a place that we had 63 days on the road, and we had a lot of inner conflict. Of course, that we are not the kind of bands that I hate that because I see that online every day, that the bands are angry with each other and they go online to wash their dirty linen. And I never had that with MOONSPELL, and hopefully never will. I think that's really childish, you know. So a band is composed by human beings. We have our shortcomings too, and to be 50 something days without rest, without any kind of mental peace, with things very badly organized. I think what really broke down this tour was that our agent booked Greece, and then we had to go by bus to Turkey. And I mean, Turkish people and Greek people, normal people like you and me can get along, but not the politicians. So we've been 8 hours or more or trying to get from Greece to Turkey, and we were in no man's land for a while, and we arrived really late, and that we were like 2 weeks playing shows at 2 a.m. For instance, and we just got back to regular schedules when we came back to Germany. So one of the casualties of this tour was really the split with Mike, because of many reasons, and because especially because we couldn't go on with him under those conditions. So it was very painful, it was very hurtful. We were best friends. The decision was mainly on my hands because that's what it takes, to kind of lead a band. And before the pandemics, I said, well, I think probably our circle is done. So let's go out with a bang. It was a great tour, sold out everywhere with great band like Rotten Christ and Silver Dust. But then the pandemics came and we were robbed of our lifestyle. So, and we were at home like everybody else, wishing that we could be on the road. So that was the first thing. Then I think the replacement with Hugo brought a lot of energy back to the MOONSPELL shows. He's an amazing drummer, an amazing person too. So I think he was the right choice to fill in Mike's shoes. And Mike was a fan favorite, but he has his own band now and his own projects. And slowly but surely, everything we did allowed us to believe again in MOONSPELL, to recover again our flame. And I think that's the last tours, the last shows, Opus Diabolicum, and especially the new album that's coming out in 2026, will prove that MOONSPELL has reborn in a way, musically and also inside our motivation. So I think nowadays I really wanted to stop, and now I want to go on. So I think it's a big third. And I think I talk about this because I see many bands with problems not talking about them publicly, and that just it's like the fruit is inside a box and it's rotting. So I mean, with South Europe, we're very honest about not being inspired or having problems or having. We don't say it's all okay all the time, but I can say now that after many, back and forth, I think MOONSPELL is stronger than ever.
And the live album was released by Napalm Records, but it's also available on your own label, Alma Mater Records. And I remember that when you started this label, you promised us two releases. So there was a reissue of Sin Pecado, which was out because I have the deluxe edition on both CD and vinyl. But there was also you promised us a release with rare tracks. So why did this second idea like was put it on the shelf?
Not in the shelf. We did some Night Eternal, deluxe editions. We did the Memorial. I mean, for me, I formed Alma Mater Records, then expanded to take care of the repertoire of Moonspell, to take care of our legacy because it was being sold by the piece, you know. And there was cool editions. There were editions that I didn't like. So I came up with Century Media and we had an agreement that we have first saying on every Century Media catalog. That's why we could release Butterfly Effects, Sin Pecado, Wolfart special editions, Irreligious, but also other bands from Century Media like Clouds, from Tiamat. But like I said to people, being on a label and being a musician, you get the understanding of both parts. And for me, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So the legacy of Moonspell for me is like a museum that has to be taken care of with a lot of care. So I try to see what the fans want because they are our main target, of course. And most of Moonspell fans are also, fortunately, collectors. So they were very, very happy with what we've been doing all about the records. But there are still many projects, in study because I have the rights for a bunch of records of Moonspell that takes years to get them because the music industry is such a complicated business. But on the other hand, I have a book, like a notebook full of projects of Moonspell side projects, remixes, rare tracks, B-sides, etc. We just released Alpha Noir Omega White again on vinyl and Omega White on stand alone because it was an album that kind of suffered from not being a standalone album. Then we had a problem with the factory; they printed the records bad, so we are working on it. And I appreciate the patience of people because we really do our best. And if it depended on us, we'll have a lot of releases. But it has to be timely because I'm not the kind of greedy person that wants to release 10 Moonspell records on 1 year because I mean Poland is blossoming in economy and thankfully not Portugal. People here are very angry because our economics are going down. So we have to consider all of this because it's not just the business, it's the life of people. I know music brings them a lot of solace too, but we have a lot of projects with Moonspell because fortunately, myself personally, I start to take care of all the recordings of many Moonspell stuff. There's a release. Some of it is going to be released on the record label. Some of it is going to be released on YouTube, like demos, and so people will definitely have the more complete experience. Yeah.
And in December, you're heading to the studio to record a follow-up to Hermitage. So, how many songs have you composed, and what direction you are going?
Well, I think we're going to make between 8 or 10 songs. We don't want a very long album this time. I prefer quality over quality. And I mean, it was the big question for us. Why should we do a new spell album with all the legacy that we've been talking about? And which direction should it be? Because it's a question for us too. And so we let all these years go by between a Hermitage and the new album. But I think if I can describe it well, it's a very atmospheric, very gothic metal album. It's a very classical album from Moonspell. And also the lyrical side is very fantasy-like, very literature oriented. And that's what we needed as musicians. And that's also what we think. We might be wrong because it's always a challenge for us to know what the fans want. I think that's what the fans are looking for. It's beautiful songs, strong, catchy choruses, heaviness mixed with atmosphere. I think I wouldn't say it's our best album. I mean, I'm done with this conversation, best album, worst album. It really depends on the zeitgeist. I think Hermitage is a great album, great reviews, great sales, but many also complaints with the fans, and many people loving it too. So I believe this will be a more consensual album, but what do I know? So I just say personally, from what I gather now, from everything we worked, from the project we did, the demo, etc. We are all very very enthusiastic and very happy about the album. Let's see how it translates to the audience, but I think it's going to be one of the best moments of Moonspell. Yeah.
Do you have any more scheduled interviews? Because it's already half an hour.
Yeah, I have now. Yeah, I have another one now.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for your time.
Sorry, this is like going to the doctor. I apologize,
Yeah.
but
Have a fun with the other interviews, and thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.
thanks for your support. You too. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.